Chapter 1. A Boy in Stratford. In 1564, a baby was born in a small town called Stratford-upon-Avon. His name was William Shakespeare. The town was quiet, surrounded by green fields and the gentle flow of the river Avon. It was a place where farmers worked hard, traders sold goods, and children played in the streets. William's family lived in a simple but comfortable house on Henley Street. His father, John Shakespeare, was a glove maker. John worked with leather, making fine gloves for the wealthy people in town. He was also a businessman, selling wool and other goods. At one time, John held an important position in the town council, but later, his business began to fail. The family struggled to make ends meet. Mary, William's mother, was a farmer's daughter. She grew up in the countryside, surrounded by nature. Mary was kind and hard-working. She took care of the children and the home. William was their third child, but two of his older sisters had died young. Life in the 1500s was not easy. Many children did not survive illnesses like smallpox or the plague. William was a curious and lively boy. He loved to watch the world around him. He would sit by the river and listen to the birds sing. He watched the farmers in the fields and the merchants in the market. The smells of fresh bread, hay, and leather filled the air. William's eyes were always wide open, taking in every detail. As a boy, William went to the local grammar school. The school was small and dark, with wooden benches and a stern teacher. The boys studied Latin, the language of ancient Rome. They read stories about brave heroes and clever gods. One of William's favorite stories was about Aeneas, a hero who escaped a burning city to find a new home. These stories sparked William's imagination. He dreamed of faraway places and exciting adventures. But life was not all learning and dreams. Sometimes the town of Stratford faced hard times. Disease swept through the streets. People whispered in fear when they heard of a new sickness. When the plague came, families stayed inside their homes, afraid to go out. Shops closed, and the streets were silent. The young boy must have felt both fear and sadness during these dark days. William's father, John, also faced challenges. His business began to fail, and he fell into debt. For a time, John was even taken to court for not paying his taxes. The family's life became more difficult. They had less money, and their future seemed uncertain. But even during hard times, there were moments of joy. Stratford was a lively town, and festivals brought people together. There were fairs with music, dancing, and colorful costumes. Traveling actors came to perform plays in the town square. William loved these performances. He watched in amazement as actors told stories of kings, queens, and magical worlds. One day, a group of players performed a story about Robin Hood, the clever outlaw who robbed the rich to help the poor. The crowd cheered and laughed, and William's heart raced with excitement. He wondered, could I one day tell stories like this? At home, William's family often told stories too. Mary, his mother, shared tales from the countryside, of ghosts, fairies, and ancient legends. These stories stayed with William. They mixed with the Latin tales he read at school and the plays he saw in the town. The seasons in Stratford brought their own rhythm to life. In the spring, the fields bloomed with flowers. In the summer, the river sparkled under the sun. In autumn, the harvest filled the air with the smell of ripe apples and hay. And in winter, the town was quiet, with smoke rising from chimneys as families gathered around warm fires. William's love for learning grew with time. He often wrote little poems or practiced his letters. His teacher noticed his talent for words. But William's education would not last forever. By the time he was a teenager, his father could no longer afford to send him to school. William had to help at home. He likely worked with his father, learning the glove trade. It was tiring work, cutting leather and stitching gloves. But even as he worked, William's mind wandered. He thought of stories and words, of heroes and villains. He dreamed of something more. By the age of 18, William's life changed again. He fell in love with a woman named Anne Hathaway. Anne was 8 years older than William and lived in a nearby village. Their courtship was fast, and soon they were married. A few months later, their first child, Susanna, was born. William was now a husband and a father. But life in Stratford was still challenging. The town was small, and opportunities were few. William wanted to do something bigger with his life. He wanted to see the world beyond Stratford. He wanted to create something that would last forever. And so, one day, William made a bold decision. He left his family behind and traveled to London. The city was far away, a place of noise and opportunity. It was a risky choice. Would he find success, or would he fail? The young man from Stratford could not have known then that he would one day become the greatest writer in the English language. But the seeds of his greatness had already been planted in the green fields of Stratford, in the stories of his childhood, and in his restless, dreaming heart. As William walked away from the quiet town of Stratford-upon-Avon, he carried with him the lessons of his youth: curiosity, resilience, and a love of words. His journey was just beginning. Chapter 2. School Days and Stories. In the heart of Stratford-upon-Avon, there stood a small grammar school. It was made of old stone with wooden beams and narrow windows. Inside, the classrooms were simple: bare walls, wooden benches, and the sound of boys reciting their lessons. This was where William Shakespeare spent his school days. William started attending the grammar school when he was about 7 years old. Like most boys in Stratford, he wore plain clothes and carried a small satchel. The schoolmaster was strict. He often carried a cane to keep the boys in line. William quickly learned that at school you had to work hard and pay attention. The school day began early. William would sit at his wooden desk, ready to learn. The lessons were focused on Latin, the language of scholars. The boys practiced reading, writing, and speaking Latin. It was not easy. The teacher would write words on the board, and the students had to copy them. Then they would memorize long passages from books like Aeneid by Virgil. William's favorite part of the day was story time. The teacher would read tales of ancient Rome and Greece. These were stories of brave heroes, fierce battles, and clever gods. William loved hearing about Aeneas, who escaped a burning city to find a new home. He listened closely to the story of Achilles, the fearless warrior who fought in the Trojan War. As the words filled the classroom, William's mind filled with pictures of distant lands and exciting adventures. At home, William practiced what he learned. He often read aloud to his younger siblings. His family didn't have many books, but the ones they had were precious. His father, John Shakespeare, had a book of prayers and another about farming. William sometimes added his own little stories to these pages, scribbling in the margins when no one was looking. But life wasn't all books and lessons. Stratford was a busy town, and William loved exploring it. The streets were full of life, markets with loud sellers, animals pulling carts, and children playing games. On some days, traveling actors would come to town. They performed plays in the open air, often in the market square. William would run to watch them, squeezing through the crowd to get a better view. The actors wore colorful costumes. They played kings, queens, fools, and villains. They made people laugh, cry, and cheer. William was amazed by their talent. He didn't know it yet, but these performances were planting seeds in his young mind. He dreamed of telling stories that could move people in the same way. One day, a group of actors performed a story about Julius Caesar. It was a tale of power, betrayal, and ambition. The audience gasped when Caesar was betrayed by his closest friends. William's heart raced as the actors spoke their lines. He could feel the drama, the tension, and the emotion in every word. Even after the actors left town, the story stayed with him. Back at school, William began to imagine his own stories. He wrote simple poems and short plays. Sometimes he acted them out with his friends. They would pretend to be knights, fairies, or kings. William often played the hero, making up his lines as he went along. His friends laughed and clapped, enjoying his talent for words. The seasons in Stratford brought new changes to William's world. In the spring, the air smelled of flowers and fresh grass. In the summer, the river sparkled under the bright sun. Autumn brought the sound of crunching leaves and the smell of ripe apples. Winter, though cold, was a time for storytelling by the fire. These changes gave William a deep love for nature and the passing of time. As he grew older, school became more challenging. The boys read harder texts and wrote longer essays. William learned about history, science, and philosophy. He read works by famous thinkers like Cicero and Seneca. These books taught him about human nature, the way people think, feel, and act. He began to see that stories were not just for entertainment. They could teach lessons, explore big ideas, and inspire change. But not everything was joyful. Sometimes William felt the weight of his family's struggles. His father's business was failing, and money was tight. William knew he couldn't stay in school forever. One day, he would have to help support his family. This thought worried him. He loved learning, but he understood that life could be unpredictable. Despite the challenges, William's curiosity never faded. He continued to listen, watch, and dream. He often sat by the river Avon, thinking about the stories he wanted to tell. The water flowed steadily, carrying small boats and reflections of the sky. William wondered if, like the river, his life would take him far from Stratford. One evening, as the sun set over the town, William heard music coming from a nearby inn. He followed the sound and saw a group of travelers sharing stories. One man was an old sailor, telling tales of storms and faraway lands. Another was a soldier, speaking of battles and bravery. William sat quietly in the corner, listening. Every word felt like a spark, lighting a fire in his imagination. By the time William finished school, he had learned much more than Latin and history. He had learned to observe people, to listen to their stories, and to imagine new worlds. These skills would stay with him forever. But for now, William was still a young man in Stratford, full of dreams. He didn't know what the future held, but he was ready to face it. Every story he had heard, every lesson he had learned, was preparing him for something greater. As he walked through the streets of Stratford, the sky turning dark above him, William felt a quiet excitement. His journey was just beginning. Somewhere, far beyond the fields and the river, his destiny awaited. Chapter 3. A Love Story Begins. William Shakespeare was just 18 years old when he met Anne Hathaway. Anne was a young woman who lived in a small village called Shottery, not far from Stratford-upon-Avon. She came from a farming family and knew the value of hard work. Anne was older than William by 8 years, but age did not matter to them. They fell in love. Anne had a quiet strength. She was calm and thoughtful, with a love for the countryside. William admired her kindness and beauty. They spent time walking in the fields and talking under the trees. Life in Stratford was simple, but their feelings for each other were strong. Their love story, however, was not without its twists. News spread quickly in small towns, and soon everyone knew that Anne was expecting a child. This created urgency. William and Anne needed to marry quickly. In those times, having a child before marriage was frowned upon. William must have felt the pressure to do the right thing for Anne and their baby. The wedding took place in late 1582. It was a modest ceremony held in a nearby village. There were no grand celebrations, but there was happiness. William and Anne promised to care for each other and their future family. For William, this was a new chapter in his life. He was now a husband, and soon he would be a father. In May 1583, their first child, Susanna, was born. She was healthy and strong, bringing joy to their small home. William worked hard to support his growing family. He likely helped his father with glove-making and other trades. But money was tight, and opportunities were few in Stratford. 2 years later, Anne gave birth to twins, Hamnet and Judith. The house was now filled with the sounds of children laughing and playing. William loved his family deeply. He enjoyed watching his children grow, but he also worried about their future. How could he provide for them? How could he give them a better life? Stratford was a quiet town, far from the excitement of big cities like London. William often walked by the River Avon, thinking about his dreams. He wanted more than a simple life in the countryside. He longed for something greater, a chance to use his talents, to write, to create. But leaving Stratford meant leaving his family. It was a difficult choice. At home, William and Anne lived modestly. They had a small house with a garden where the children could play. Anne managed the household, cooking meals and caring for the little ones. She was practical and steady, keeping the family together. William admired her strength, but he felt restless. One evening, as William sat by the fire, he shared his thoughts with Anne. "I love our life here," he said, "but I feel there is something I must do. I want to tell stories, Anne. I want to write plays and poems that people will remember." Anne listened quietly. She understood William's dreams, but she also worried. London was far away, and the city was full of dangers. What if he failed? What if he never returned? Still, she saw the fire in his eyes. She knew he had to try. The decision was not made lightly. William likely spent many nights thinking about it. Leaving Stratford meant leaving the safety of home, the comfort of family, and the love of Anne. But staying meant giving up on his dreams. It was a painful choice. Finally, William made up his mind. He would go to London. He would try to make a name for himself as a playwright and poet. He promised Anne that he would return, and that his success would bring a better life for their children. With a heavy heart, he packed his belongings and said goodbye. The journey to London was long and uncertain. William traveled on foot and by carriage, passing through fields, forests, and bustling villages. He carried little with him: some clothes, a few coins, and his dreams. He must have felt both fear and excitement. What awaited him in the great city? Back in Stratford, life went on. Anne continued to care for their children, working tirelessly to keep the family stable. She missed William deeply, but she stayed strong for Susanna, Hamnet, and Judith. Letters between them were rare, as writing and delivering messages was costly. Still, Anne trusted William. She believed in his talent and determination. In London, William faced many challenges. The city was crowded, noisy, and competitive. But William was determined. He found work with a theater company and began writing plays. At first, he struggled. His name was unknown, and he had to prove himself. He worked long hours, writing late into the night. Meanwhile, in Stratford, Anne heard rumors of William's growing success. His plays were being performed on stage, and people were beginning to talk about the young writer from Stratford. Anne felt a mix of pride and longing. She wished she could see his work, to watch the stories he had created come to life. Over time, William's efforts paid off. His plays became popular, drawing large crowds to the theaters. He sent money back to Stratford to support Anne and the children. Though they were far apart, William's heart remained with his family. One day, Anne received a letter from William. It was filled with hope and promise. He wrote about his new life in London, the excitement of the theater, and the dreams he still carried. He also wrote about his love for Anne and their children. "Everything I do," he said, "is for you and our family." Anne held the letter close. She knew that their life was not perfect, but she also knew that William's work was important. His words had the power to move people, to inspire them, and to make them dream. As the years went by, William's success grew. He became one of the most famous playwrights in London. But he never forgot where he came from. Stratford-upon-Avon, with its green fields and quiet streets, was always in his heart. For Anne, life was filled with both challenges and rewards. She raised their children with love and care, teaching them the values of hard work and kindness. She waited patiently for the day when William would return home. Their love story was not like the ones William wrote about in his plays. It was not filled with grand gestures or dramatic moments. Instead, it was a story of quiet strength, sacrifice, and enduring love. Anne's belief in William gave him the courage to follow his dreams, and William's love for Anne kept him grounded, even in the bustling world of London. Together, they built a life that would inspire future generations. And so, as William's journey in the world of theater began, his heart remained tied to the small town of Stratford-upon-Avon, where his love story with Anne Hathaway had first begun. Chapter 4. London Calls. In the late 1580s or early 1590s, William Shakespeare made a bold decision. He left Stratford-upon-Avon, his family, and the familiar life he knew. His destination? London, the bustling heart of England. It was a city full of opportunity, but also full of challenges. For a young man with big dreams, London was both exciting and frightening. The journey to London was long. William likely walked much of the way, passing through quiet villages and open fields. As he approached the city, the roads grew busier. Merchants, travelers, and carts filled with goods crowded the paths. The closer he got, the louder the world became. Soon, the skyline of London appeared in the distance, with its towering church spires and the great River Thames winding through the city. When William entered London, he was greeted by a different world. The streets were alive with noise. Sellers called out to passers-by, offering fresh bread, fish, and fruit. Musicians played lively tunes on street corners. The air smelled of smoke, spices, and the nearby river. London was not like Stratford. It was bigger, faster, and full of energy. But the city also had a darker side. The streets were narrow and dirty. Beggars sat in alleys hoping for a coin. Thieves and pickpockets roamed, looking for easy targets. Disease was a constant fear. The plague had struck the city many times, leaving thousands dead. For someone new to London, it was a dangerous place. William needed work, but finding a job was not easy. He had no money, no powerful friends, and no reputation. He stayed in cheap lodgings, sharing small, crowded rooms with other newcomers. Food was simple: bread, cheese, and sometimes a bit of meat. Life in London was hard, and William often wondered if he had made the right choice. Despite the difficulties, William did not give up. He spent his days exploring the city. He visited markets, watched street performers, and listened to people's stories. The sights and sounds of London filled his mind. Everywhere he looked, he found inspiration. The city was alive with drama, arguments, celebrations, and everyday struggles. One place caught William's attention more than any other: the theaters. London was home to several playhouses where actors performed for large crowds. These theaters were unlike anything William had seen in Stratford. They were round, open-air buildings with a stage in the center. People from all walks of life came to watch plays: wealthy nobles, poor laborers, and curious visitors. The audience stood or sat close to the stage, shouting, laughing, and even throwing food if they didn't like what they saw. William wanted to be part of this world. He started by doing small jobs for theater companies. He helped carry props, copied scripts, and worked backstage. It was hard, tiring work, but William was determined. He watched the actors closely, learning how they spoke and moved. He studied the plays, paying attention to the way stories were told. In time, William began writing his own plays. His first works were simple and followed the style of the day. At first, the theater owners were hesitant. Who was this young man from Stratford? But William's talent quickly became clear. His words had power. They could make people laugh, cry, or sit in silence, completely captivated. One of William's first successes was Henry VI. It was a history play about England's past kings and battles. Audiences loved it. They cheered for the heroes, booed the villains, and came back for more. William was beginning to make a name for himself. As his plays gained popularity, William's life started to change. He earned more money and moved into better lodgings. He met other writers, actors, and theater owners. Some became friends, while others were rivals. The world of theater was competitive, and not everyone wanted to see William succeed. But he remained focused on his work. William's rise was also helped by the support of powerful patrons. One such patron was Henry Wriothesley, the Earl of Southampton. The young Earl admired William's writing and encouraged him to publish his poems. With the Earl's help, William published Venus and Adonis, a romantic poem that became very popular. It was a bold and passionate work, and it showed the world another side of William's talent. Life in London continued to inspire William. He walked along the River Thames, watching boats carry goods from faraway lands. He visited the busy markets, where traders sold silk, spices, and strange objects from across the seas. He listened to sailors tell stories of their adventures and watched nobles ride through the streets in grand carriages. Every experience added to his imagination. But London was not without danger. The theaters often faced criticism from religious leaders who believed they were sinful places. Sometimes, the playhouses were forced to close because of the plague. These closures were devastating for actors and writers. Without performances, there was no money. William had to be resourceful, using these quiet times to write and plan his next plays. Despite the challenges, William's reputation grew. His plays were performed in the most famous theaters, including the Theater and the Curtain. Audiences came from all over to see his work. They laughed at the comedies, were moved by the tragedies, and marveled at the clever dialogue. William's words were beginning to shine. One day, he watched from behind the stage as the audience erupted in applause. He felt a sense of pride, but also a deep responsibility. He knew he had found his calling. The boy from Stratford had become a playwright in London. By the end of the 1590s, William was no longer just a young man trying to make a name for himself. He was a rising star in the world of theater. But his journey was far from over. Bigger challenges and greater successes lay ahead. London had tested William, but it had also given him a stage, a place where his talent could grow. As the city hummed with life around him, William Shakespeare stood ready to write the stories that would one day change the world. Chapter 5. The Rising Star. In London, William Shakespeare's journey as a playwright was just beginning. He joined a theater company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. This group of talented actors performed plays for the people of London, and their name carried the approval of a powerful patron, the Lord Chamberlain himself. For William, it was the perfect place to share his stories with the world. The company performed at theaters like the Theater and the Curtain. These were large, open-air playhouses, bustling with life and energy. The audience came from all walks of life: nobles, merchants, workers, and even beggars. Some sat in the higher galleries, while others stood in the yard, right in front of the stage. The crowds were lively and loud, often shouting, laughing, or crying during the plays. William watched them closely, learning what they loved and what moved them. One of William's early plays, Romeo and Juliet, became a sensation. It told the story of two young lovers from rival families, the Montagues and the Capulets. Their love was strong, but their world was full of hatred and conflict. The play had everything: romance, humor, drama, and tragedy. Audiences were swept away by the emotions of the story. When the actors performed Romeo and Juliet for the first time, the crowd was mesmerized. They laughed at the playful banter between Romeo and his friends. They cheered at the boldness of Juliet, who dared to speak her mind in a time when women were expected to stay silent. And when the tragedy unfolded, when Romeo and Juliet met their untimely end, many in the audience wept. The power of William's words touched their hearts. William's ability to write both comedy and tragedy made him stand out. He could make people laugh with clever wordplay and lively characters, like in A Midsummer Night's Dream. But he could also bring tears with stories of betrayal and loss, like in Romeo and Juliet. His plays were not just entertainment. They explored deep emotions and the complexity of human life. The success of Romeo and Juliet marked a turning point for William. He was no longer just another writer trying to make a name for himself. He was becoming a rising star in London's theatre world. His plays were in demand, and the actors of the Lord Chamberlain's men were proud to perform them. William's work was not limited to writing. He often collaborated with the actors, helping them understand the characters and the emotions behind the lines. He believed that every word had meaning, and that every gesture on stage told part of the story. The actors admired his dedication and trusted his vision. But success did not come without challenges. London's theatre scene was fiercely competitive. Other playwrights, like Christopher Marlowe and Ben Jonson, were also creating remarkable works. Rivalry among writers was intense, and William had to work hard to stay ahead. He spent long hours writing, revising, and perfecting his plays. Some nights, he barely slept, his mind filled with ideas and lines. The theaters themselves faced threats as well. The city authorities often viewed playhouses with suspicion. They believed theaters could spread disease or encourage bad behavior. At times, theaters were forced to close, leaving actors and playwrights without work. William had to adapt, using these breaks to write and prepare for the next opportunity. Despite these difficulties, William's passion for storytelling kept him going. His imagination seemed endless. He created characters that felt real, people with hopes, fears, and flaws. Audiences saw themselves in his plays, and this connection made his work unforgettable. One of William's strengths was his ability to capture both the grand and the simple moments of life. In Romeo and Juliet, for example, he wrote about love in its purest form, but he also included the everyday humor and struggles of supporting characters like the nurse and Mercutio. This balance made his plays rich and relatable. As William's fame grew, so did the success of the Lord Chamberlain's men. The company attracted larger audiences, and their performances became more polished. They often performed for noble families, and even Queen Elizabeth II herself attended some of their plays. The Queen was a great supporter of the arts and admired William's talent. Imagine the excitement when word spread that the Queen would be attending a performance. The actors rehearsed tirelessly, and William refined the script, ensuring every line was perfect. When the day came, the play was performed with precision and passion. The Queen's approval was a great honor, and it further established William's reputation as a playwright of extraordinary skill. But William's success did not make him forget his roots. He often drew inspiration from the stories and experiences of ordinary people. His plays reflected the joys and struggles of life, whether it was the humor of a foolish servant, the ambition of a king, or the heartbreak of lost love. William understood that every person, no matter their status, had a story worth telling. Outside of the theater, London continued to inspire William. He observed the bustling markets, the lively taverns, and the quiet corners of the city. He listened to sailors share tales of faraway lands and watched merchants haggle over goods. These sights and sounds found their way into his plays, adding depth and color to his work. By the end of the 1590s, William was firmly established as one of London's leading playwrights. He had achieved what he had set out to do when he left Stratford. He had made a name for himself in the great city. But his journey was far from over. There were still new stories to write, new stages to conquer, and new heights to reach. Through his hard work, creativity, and determination, William Shakespeare had become a rising star. His words echoed across the theaters of London, touching the hearts of those who heard them. And though he could not have known it at the time, his stories would one day reach far beyond the city, lasting for centuries and inspiring millions. Before we begin Chapter 6, a quick note for our listeners. You're currently listening to this audiobook on Woo English. Remember, this content is specially made for Woo English listeners only. If you're hearing it on any other channel, it may be a violation of Woo English's rights. Please ensure you're tuned into the right source to fully enjoy and respect this audiobook journey. Now, let's continue the story. Chapter 6: The Globe and the Spotlight. By the late 1590s, William Shakespeare was one of the most successful playwrights in London. His plays were loved by many, but he wanted more. He dreamed of a theater that he and his company could call their own, a place where stories could come alive in front of eager audiences. That dream became a reality when William helped create one of the most famous theaters in history, the Globe. The idea for the Globe began with the Lord Chamberlain's men. This was the theater company that William worked with. They had been performing at a theater called The Theater, but their lease had ended. They needed a new home. Instead of renting another building, they decided to build their own playhouse. It would be bigger, better, and more exciting than anything London had seen before. The project was ambitious. The company needed money, land, and materials to build their dream theater. Each member of the Lord Chamberlain's men, including William, invested in the project. It was risky, but they believed it was worth it. William put his earnings from his plays into the theater, showing how deeply he believed in their vision. The land for the theater was chosen on the south bank of the River Thames. This area, called Southwark, was lively and full of activity. Markets, inns, and other theaters filled the streets. It was a place where Londoners came to be entertained. The location was perfect. Building the Globe was no easy task. Workers carried heavy wooden beams and used simple tools to construct the grand structure. The design was unique. The Globe was round, with an open roof that let in sunlight. Inside, there was a large stage that jutted out into the audience. 3 levels of seating surrounded the stage, allowing people to watch from every angle. It could hold up to 3,000 people, making it one of the largest theaters of its time. In 1599, the Globe was finally complete. It stood proudly beside the Thames, a symbol of creativity and ambition. The theatre's flag flew high, signaling to the people of London that a performance was about to begin. The excitement was palpable. The Lord Chamberlain's men were ready to welcome audiences to their new home. The Globe quickly became the heart of London's entertainment. People from all walks of life came to see the plays performed there. The rich sat in the covered galleries, paying more for the best views. The poor, known as groundlings, stood in the open yard right in front of the stage. They paid just a penny for a ticket. Whether rich or poor, everyone shared the same excitement when the actors stepped onto the stage. William's plays brought the Globe to life. Comedies like Twelfth Night made audiences laugh with their clever wordplay and silly misunderstandings. Tragedies like Hamlet left them in awe as they pondered questions about life and death. Histories like Henry V inspired pride in England's past. Each performance was an experience filled with emotion and energy. One of the reasons the Globe was so special was the connection between the actors and the audience. There were no barriers separating them. The actors could see the crowd's faces, hear their reactions, and even speak directly to them. This created a unique bond. When an actor delivered a powerful line, the audience cheered. When a character died tragically, they gasped. The Globe was not just a theater, it was a shared experience. William spent much of his time at the Globe. He worked closely with the actors, helping them understand their roles. He explained the emotions behind the lines and the movements needed to bring the characters to life. William was not just a writer. He was a storyteller who understood the magic of the stage. But life at the Globe was not without challenges. The theater had to compete with others in London, and new plays were constantly needed to attract audiences. William worked tirelessly, writing some of his greatest works during this time. Plays like Julius Caesar and Macbeth were performed at the Globe, leaving audiences spellbound. There was also danger. Theaters were often viewed with suspicion by the authorities. Some believed they were places of sin and disorder. Others feared they could spread disease, especially during outbreaks of the plague. When the plague swept through London, the Globe was forced to close temporarily. These were difficult times for William and the company, but they never gave up. One of the most dramatic moments in the Globe's history came in 1613. During a performance of Henry VIII, a cannon used for special effects accidentally set the thatched roof on fire. The flames spread quickly, and the theater was destroyed. The audience escaped safely, but the Globe was reduced to ashes. For William and the company, it was a devastating loss. But the story of the Globe did not end there. The Lord Chamberlain's men rebuilt the theater, stronger and grander than before. It reopened the following year, a testament to their resilience and determination. William continued to write and produce plays, ensuring that the Globe remained the center of London's theatre scene. Through all its triumphs and challenges, the Globe was more than just a building. It was a place where stories came alive, where people laughed, cried, and dreamed together. For William, it was a symbol of what could be achieved through hard work and imagination. As William walked along the banks of the Thames, looking at the Globe, he must have felt a deep sense of pride. This theater was not just a place for entertainment, it was a legacy, a gift to the people of London and to the world. Though William could not have known it at the time, the Globe would continue to inspire generations long after his death. Today, a modern replica of the Globe stands in London, reminding us of the man who dared to dream and the stories that changed the world. Chapter 7. Writing for Kings and Queens. By the late 1590s, William Shakespeare's fame had spread far and wide. His plays were performed in the grand theatres of London, enjoyed by people from all walks of life. But one audience was particularly special: Queen Elizabeth. For the Queen was a great supporter of the arts, and she loved the theatre. Among all the playwrights of her time, William's work stood out. Queen Elizabeth was known for her intelligence and strong will. She appreciated plays that were clever, entertaining, and full of life. One of her favorite works by William was A Midsummer Night's Dream. This magical comedy was filled with fairies, love, and laughter. It captured the Queen's imagination and brought her great joy. Imagine the excitement when William learned that the Queen herself had praised his play. It was a great honor, but it also brought new pressure. Writing for royalty was not easy. The Queen had high expectations, and she did not tolerate failure. William knew that he had to keep creating plays that would impress her. To meet these expectations, William worked harder than ever. He wrote plays that celebrated England's history and strength, such as Henry V. These plays were filled with heroic speeches and patriotic themes. The Queen admired William's ability to inspire pride in the nation. One special event took place in 1599 when Henry V was performed for the Queen. The audience was filled with nobles, soldiers, and important figures. The play told the story of a young king who led his army to victory against great odds. When the actor playing King Henry delivered the famous speech, "Once more unto the breach, dear friends," the crowd erupted in applause. William had once again captured the hearts of his audience. But writing for the Queen was not without challenges. Elizabethan England was a time of political intrigue and danger. The Queen's court was filled with rivalries and secrets. William had to be careful with his words. A single line in a play could be interpreted as support for or against certain factions. He had to balance creativity with caution. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth I passed away. Her death marked the end of an era, but for William, it also brought a new beginning. King James I, the first monarch of both England and Scotland, came to the throne. King James, like Elizabeth, loved the theater. he became a patron of William's company, which was renamed the King's Men in his honor. Performing for King James brought fresh opportunities and challenges. The king had different tastes from the queen. He enjoyed plays with dark themes, mystery, and supernatural elements. William adapted to this new audience by writing works like Macbeth. This play, filled with witches, ambition, and tragedy, was perfectly suited to the king's interests. Macbeth was first performed for King James in 1606. The play explored the dangers of unchecked ambition and the consequences of betrayal. The king, who believed in the power of witches and magic, was particularly intrigued by the eerie scenes involving the three witches. The play was a success, earning William even greater respect and recognition. Despite his success, writing for royalty was a demanding task. William often faced tight deadlines and high expectations. The court wanted plays that would entertain but also reflect the values and concerns of the monarchy. Every word had to be carefully chosen, every scene perfectly crafted. William's dedication to his craft was unmatched. He spent countless hours refining his plays, ensuring that they met the highest standards. He worked closely with the actors, guiding them in their performances. His attention to detail was remarkable, and it showed in the quality of his work. One of the most memorable performances for King James took place in the Banqueting House, a grand hall in London. The King's Men performed The Tempest, a play about a shipwreck, magic, and forgiveness. The king and his court watched in awe as the actors brought the story to life. The play's themes of power and redemption resonated deeply with the audience. But the pressure of writing for royalty was not just about pleasing the monarch. William also had to consider the audience's reaction. The court was filled with powerful people who could influence his career. A successful play could bring rewards, but a poorly received one could lead to criticism or even danger. Despite these challenges, William thrived. He had the rare ability to understand what his audience wanted, whether they were commoners in the globe or nobles in the royal court. His plays combined beauty, wit, and wisdom, making them timeless. As William's relationship with the court grew stronger, so did his reputation. He became one of the most respected figures in England. People admired not only his talent, but also his ability to navigate the complexities of royal patronage. He remained humble and focused, always striving to improve his craft. Even as he wrote for kings and queens, William never lost touch with the common people. His plays continued to speak to everyone, rich or poor. He believed that the theater was for all, and his work reflected that belief. Through his dedication and creativity, William Shakespeare proved that he could rise to any challenge. Writing for royalty was a test of his skill, but it also gave him the chance to reach new heights. His plays entertained and inspired the most powerful people in England, leaving a legacy that would endure for centuries. As William stood in the royal court, watching his plays performed for kings and queens, he must have felt a deep sense of pride. His journey from Stratford-upon-Avon to the heart of England's monarchy was a testament to his hard work and talent. But more importantly, it was a reminder of the power of stories to bring people together, no matter their station in life. And so, with each new play, William continued to shine. The boy from Stratford had become the bard of England, beloved by royalty and commoners alike. Chapter 8. Tragedy and Triumph. Not all of William Shakespeare's plays were filled with laughter and joy. Some of his greatest works were dark, emotional, and deeply moving. These plays were called tragedies. They explored the pain of loss, the struggle for power, and the complexity of human nature. Audiences who came to see these plays were often left speechless, their hearts touched by the raw emotions on stage. One of William's most famous tragedies is Hamlet. The play tells the story of a young prince who is grieving the death of his father. But there is more to the story. Hamlet's father, the king, has been murdered. His ghost appears to Hamlet, revealing the truth and asking for revenge. Hamlet struggles with this request. Should he take revenge and risk his soul? Or should he do nothing and let the guilty go free? The play dives deep into questions about life and death. In one famous scene, Hamlet holds a skull in his hand and asks, "To be or not to be, that is the question." He wonders whether it is better to endure life's pain or to end it all. This moment struck a chord with audiences. Many people in William's time, just like today, faced uncertainty and fear. Hamlet's words gave voice to their doubts. Hamlet was first performed at the Globe, and it quickly became a sensation. The audience was captivated by the prince's inner struggle. They felt his sadness, his anger, and his confusion. When the play reached its tragic ending, with many of the characters dead on stage, the theater fell silent. The power of William's storytelling left everyone in awe. Another of William's great tragedies is Macbeth. This play explores the dangerous side of ambition. Macbeth is a brave soldier who is loyal to his king. But when three witches predict that he will one day become king himself, his ambition takes over. Encouraged by his wife, Lady Macbeth, he murders the king and seizes the throne. However, his guilt and paranoia drive him to madness. Audiences were both horrified and fascinated by Macbeth. The play showed how unchecked ambition can destroy a person. It also explored themes of fate and free will. Did the witches control Macbeth's actions? Or was it his own choice to commit such terrible crimes? These questions kept viewers thinking long after the play ended. William's tragedies often focused on the darker side of human emotions. Jealousy, betrayal, and greed were common themes. In Othello, a trusted soldier named Iago manipulates his commander, Othello, into believing that his wife Desdemona has been unfaithful. Othello's jealousy leads him to commit an unforgivable act. The play is a heartbreaking story of love destroyed by lies. Audiences were deeply moved by Othello. Many wept for Desdemona and felt anger toward Iago. The play also addressed important issues such as race and discrimination, as Othello is portrayed as an outsider in Venetian society. William had a remarkable ability to capture the struggles of his time and make them meaningful for everyone. Writing tragedies was not just about creating sadness. It was about exploring life's most difficult questions. What makes a person good or bad? Can people change their fate? What does it mean to love or lose someone? These were the questions William asked in his plays, and audiences responded with curiosity and emotion. But tragedies were not easy to write. William spent long hours crafting his stories, carefully choosing every word. He wanted his characters to feel real, their emotions raw and true. His actors often worked closely with him, practicing their roles until every line carried the right weight. William understood that tragedy had to feel personal for it to move people. While his plays were filled with drama on stage, William's own life also had moments of sadness. In 1596, he experienced a great personal loss. His only son, Hamnet, died at the age of 11. The cause of Hamnet's death is unknown, but it was a common tragedy in a time when diseases spread easily. The loss left a deep mark on William. Some scholars believe that the grief he felt inspired the emotional depth of his later tragedies. Despite his personal struggles, William continued to write. His tragedies became more complex and powerful. In King Lear, he told the story of an aging king who divides his kingdom among his daughters, only to be betrayed by those he trusts most. The play explores themes of family, loyalty, and the pain of growing old. Many consider it one of William's most profound works. Audiences were drawn to these tragedies because they reflected real life. In the Elizabethan and Jacobean eras, life was often harsh. People faced wars, disease, and social inequality. William's plays gave them a way to understand and process their own experiences. The theater became a place where they could confront their fears and find comfort in shared emotions. Even in tragedy, William's plays offered moments of beauty and hope. His characters often found strength in their darkest hours. In Hamlet, even as the prince faces death, he accepts his fate with dignity. In Macbeth, the title character reflects on the emptiness of his actions, delivering a haunting speech about the meaning of life. These moments reminded audiences that, even in the face of despair, there is always something to learn. William's ability to create such powerful tragedies set him apart from other playwrights. He had a unique gift for understanding the human heart. His plays were not just performances, they were lessons about life. They showed that joy and pain are both part of the human experience. By the time he wrote his later tragedies, William's reputation was unmatched. People came from all over to see his work. His plays were performed not only at the Globe, but also at the royal court. Even King James was moved by the emotional power of Macbeth and King Lear. William's talent had earned him a place among the greatest writers of his time. As William stood in the shadows of the Globe, watching his tragedies unfold on stage, he must have felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had transformed human sorrow into art. His words had the power to move people, to make them think, and to help them feel less alone in their struggles. Chapter 9. Shadows and Loss. William Shakespeare's life was filled with both triumphs and hardships. He became famous for his plays, but his personal life was not always happy. One of the greatest sorrows he faced was the loss of his son, Hamnet. This tragedy changed him forever. Hamnet was born in 1585, a twin to his sister Judith. He was William and Anne's only son. William loved all his children, but Hamnet held a special place in his heart. As the only boy, Hamnet was seen as the one who would carry on the Shakespeare name. William likely imagined a bright future for him. Perhaps Hamnet would grow up to be a scholar, a merchant, or even a playwright like his father. But life in the 16th century was full of dangers, especially for children. Illnesses like the plague, smallpox, and typhus were common. Medicine was limited, and even a small sickness could become deadly. Hamnet grew up in Stratford-upon-Avon, far from the crowded streets of London, but no place was truly safe from disease. In the summer of 1596, tragedy struck. Hamnet fell ill. We do not know what sickness he had, but it came quickly and left no time for recovery. Despite the family's prayers and care, Hamnet died on August 11, 1596. He was just 11 years old. The news of Hamnet's death must have reached William in London. We can only imagine the pain he felt. Losing a child is one of the hardest things a parent can endure. William may have blamed himself for being far from Stratford when his son needed him most. Grief would have weighed heavily on his heart. Hamnet was buried in Holy Trinity Church, the same church where William had been baptized. The family gathered to say goodbye. The loss left a deep scar on the Shakespeares. Anne now had to care for their two daughters, Susanna and Judith, while carrying the memory of their lost son. For Judith, losing her twin brother must have been especially painful. The bond between twins is unique, and Judith's world was forever changed. William's grief poured into his work. In the years following Hamnet's death, his plays became darker, filled with themes of loss, guilt, and the fragility of life. One of these plays was Hamlet. The story of Prince Hamlet shares more than just a similar name with William's son. In the play, Hamlet mourns the death of his father and struggles with feelings of loneliness and anger. Some believe William channeled his own sorrow into this character, creating one of the most complex and memorable figures in literature. The famous line from Hamlet, "What a piece of work is man," reflects the pain and wonder of being human. It captures both the beauty and the sadness of life. Audiences watching the play could feel the depth of William's emotions. His words resonated because they came from a place of real loss. Another play that reflects William's grief is King Lear. In this tragedy, Lear, an aging king, loses everything he holds dear, including his daughters. The play is a heartbreaking exploration of family, loyalty, and regret. William's own experiences with loss likely influenced the powerful emotions in the story. When Lear cries out, How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. Audiences felt the weight of his despair. Despite his personal pain, William continued to write and work. Some might wonder how he found the strength to carry on. Perhaps it was his love for storytelling that gave him purpose. Writing allowed him to process his emotions and share them with the world. Through his plays, he transformed his grief into art. William's sadness also brought him closer to universal truths about life. He understood that everyone experiences loss at some point. His plays gave voice to this shared human experience, reminding people that they were not alone in their sorrow. His tragedies were not just about death. They were about the resilience of the human spirit. At the same time, William's life in London continued. The theater remained a place of joy and creativity. Even as he wrote tragedies, he also crafted comedies that brought laughter to audiences. Plays like Twelfth Night and As You Like It showed that life, though filled with sadness, could also hold moments of happiness and love. William also found comfort in his family. He visited Stratford often, spending time with Anne and their daughters. He supported them financially, using his success to ensure they lived comfortably. Although Hamnet was gone, his memory remained a part of their lives. William's plays and poems became a way to honor his son, preserving his legacy through art. Hamnet's death was a turning point for William. It deepened his understanding of human emotions and shaped his later works. He wrote with greater complexity, exploring not just the surface of his characters, but their inner struggles. This depth made his plays timeless, still relevant hundreds of years later. In the years that followed, William continued to achieve great success, but the shadow of Hamnet's loss stayed with him. It became a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. His ability to take personal pain and turn it into something meaningful is part of what made him one of the greatest writers in history. As William stood on the stage of the Globe, watching actors perform his lines, he must have felt a mix of emotions. Pride in his achievements, joy in the laughter of the audience, and sadness for the son who would never see his work. His life was a blend of shadows and light, just like his plays. Hamnet may have been lost to history, but his influence on William's work is undeniable. Through his father's words, his memory lives on, touching the hearts of everyone who experiences Shakespeare's plays. William's ability to transform grief into beauty is a testament to the power of art. Though the pain of losing Hamnet never truly faded, William found strength in his writing. His plays became a way to heal, to connect, and to endure. They remind us that even in the darkest times, creativity and love can light the way forward. Chapter 9. Shadows and Loss. William Shakespeare's life was filled with both success and sorrow. While he achieved great fame as a playwright, his personal life was marked by heartbreak. One of his deepest sorrows came in 1596 when his son, Hamnet, died at just 11 years old. This loss left a lasting mark on William and influenced his work in powerful ways. Hamnet was one of William and Anne's 3 children. He was a twin born alongside his sister Judith in 1585. As the only son, Hamnet was special to the family. William likely saw in him the future of the Shakespeare name. Hamnet grew up in Stratford-upon-Avon, where the family lived a quiet, rural life. William, however, spent much of his time in London, writing and producing plays. Though far away, he remained deeply connected to his family. Life in the 16th century was difficult, especially for children. Disease spread quickly, and medical knowledge was limited. In the summer of 1596, Hamnet became ill. The exact illness is not known, but it was sudden and severe. Despite the family's efforts, he could not be saved. Hamnet's death devastated the Shakespeares. William was likely in London when he heard the news. Imagine his pain, the guilt of being far from home, the helplessness of knowing he could not protect his son. He must have felt a deep ache in his heart. The loss of a child is one of the greatest sorrows a parent can endure. For William, it was a shadow that would follow him for the rest of his life. Hamnet was buried in Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon. It was the same church where William had been baptized as a baby. The funeral was a somber event. Anne and the children mourned deeply, and Judith, Hamnet's twin, must have felt an especially sharp pain. The bond between twins is unique, and her world was forever changed. This tragedy affected William in many ways. Though he continued to write and work, his plays took on a darker, more emotional tone. His grief found its way into his stories. He used his pain to explore themes of loss, love, and mortality. Through his writing, he processed his emotions and shared them with the world. One play that reflects William's sorrow is Hamlet. The title character shares a name similar to Hamnet, and some believe the play was inspired by William's son. In Hamlet, the young prince mourns the death of his father and struggles with the meaning of life and death. The famous line, "To be or not to be," captures Hamlet's inner conflict. It is a moment of deep reflection, and it resonated with audiences who, like William, had experienced loss. Another play shaped by William's grief is King Lear. In this tragedy, Lear, an aging king, suffers betrayal and heartbreak from those he loves. The play explores the fragility of family bonds and the pain of regret. When Lear holds the lifeless body of his daughter Cordelia, his cries echo the sorrow of a parent who has lost a child. The raw emotion in these scenes shows William's ability to transform his personal pain into art. William's tragedies became more complex and powerful after Hamnet's death. They explored deep questions. What does it mean to lose someone you love? Can pain lead to understanding? What is the purpose of life when faced with suffering? These questions were universal, and audiences connected with them on a personal level. William's plays gave voice to feelings that were often difficult to express. Despite his grief, William continued to work tirelessly. He poured himself into his writing, creating some of his most famous plays during this period. His ability to turn personal sorrow into creative energy was remarkable. It showed his resilience and his commitment to his craft. At the same time, William's loss brought him closer to the human experience. He understood that pain and joy are both part of life. This understanding made his characters feel real. They were not just figures on a stage, they were people with hopes, fears, and struggles. This depth of emotion is one of the reasons William's work remains timeless. While William's professional life flourished, his personal life remained deeply tied to Stratford. He visited Anne and his daughters whenever he could. His success in London allowed him to provide for them, ensuring they lived comfortably. But no amount of success could fill the void left by Hamnet's absence. The memory of his son stayed with William, shaping his thoughts and his art. In The Tempest, one of William's later plays, he wrote about letting go and finding peace. The character Prospero, a magician, chooses to give up his powers and forgive those who wronged him. Many see this play as a reflection of William's own journey. After years of loss and hard work, he was beginning to find a sense of acceptance. Hamnet's death also reminded William of the fragility of life. This awareness added a layer of urgency to his work. He wrote with passion, knowing that his words could outlive him. In a way, his plays became a legacy for his son, a way to keep Hamnet's memory alive. Today, we remember Hamnet not just as William's son, but as an important part of his story. Without this loss, we might not have Hamlet, King Lear, or The Tempest. Hamnet's life, though short, left a profound impact on William and on the world of literature. As we think about William's journey, we see a man who faced great sorrow but never gave up. His ability to turn pain into beauty is what made him extraordinary. Through his plays, he showed us that even in the darkest moments, there is light. His words remind us that life is precious and love endures. William Shakespeare's life was filled with shadows and loss, but also with creativity and triumph. He taught us that pain can inspire greatness and that art can heal. As audiences continue to watch his plays, they are moved by the emotions he captured. Through his work, William's legacy and Hamnet's memory live on. Chapter 10. The Final Curtain. By the early 1600s, William Shakespeare had achieved great success. His plays were performed in the grand theatres of London and admired by kings and queens. He was wealthy, respected, and celebrated as one of the greatest writers of his time. But as the years passed, William began to long for something else. He wanted peace, rest, and the comfort of home. In 1611, William decided to leave London and return to Stratford-upon-Avon. The bustling city had given him fame and fortune, but his heart was in the quiet countryside where his journey had begun. Stratford was where his family lived, where the river Avon flowed gently, and where life moved at a slower, more peaceful pace. By this time, William was no longer a young man. Years of hard work and travel had taken their toll. He had spent countless nights writing by candlelight, creating stories that would outlast him. Now, he wanted to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He returned to Stratford, where his wife Anne and his daughters Susanna and Judith were waiting. In Stratford, William lived in a grand house called New Place. It was the largest house in town, a sign of the wealth he had earned through his plays and poems. New Place had a beautiful garden where William could walk and think. He spent his days surrounded by family, reflecting on his life and the stories he had written. Though William had left the stage, he had not stopped dreaming. His final plays, such as The Tempest, showed a softer, wiser side of him. The Tempest is about a magician named Prospero, who decides to give up his magic and forgive his enemies. Many believe this play reflected William's own feelings as he prepared to step away from his career. In Prospero's final speech, he says, "Now my charms are all o'erthrown, and what strength I have's mine own." It was as if William was saying goodbye to the world of theater. But life in Stratford was not without sorrow. In 1613, a fire destroyed the Globe Theatre, the place where so many of William's plays had been performed. Though it was later rebuilt, the loss of the original Globe was a reminder of how fragile life could be. For William, it was another sign that his time in the spotlight was ending. In 1616, as spring arrived in Stratford, William's health began to fail. He was only 52 years old, but life in the 16th century was hard, and many people did not live long lives. We do not know exactly what illness he had, but it weakened him quickly. Despite his failing health, William remained surrounded by his family and friends. They cared for him and brought him comfort in his final days. On April 23, 1616, William Shakespeare passed away. It was a quiet end to a remarkable life. The boy from Stratford who had dreamed of telling stories had become the greatest writer in the English language. His death was mourned by many, but his legacy was just beginning. William was buried in Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon, the same church where he had been baptized as a baby and where his son Hamnet was laid to rest. On his gravestone, an inscription warns against disturbing his remains. It reads, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." This unusual epitaph reflects William's wit and his deep connection to his final resting place. After William's death, his friends and colleagues worked to preserve his plays. In 1623, 7 years after his passing, they published the first folio. This book contained 36 of his plays, many of which might have been lost if not for their efforts. The first folio became one of the most important books in history, ensuring that William's stories would live on. Today, William Shakespeare's work continues to inspire people around the world. His plays have been translated into every major language and are performed in countless theaters. From Romeo and Juliet to Hamlet, his stories explore timeless themes of love, power, jealousy, and forgiveness. They remind us of what it means to be human. As we think about William's final years, we see a man who had lived a full and extraordinary life. He rose from humble beginnings in Stratford to achieve fame in London and beyond. But even as he gained wealth and recognition, he never forgot where he came from. Stratford was always his home, the place where his journey began and ended. William's life teaches us that dreams can come true through hard work and determination. His legacy reminds us of the power of stories to connect, inspire, and endure. Though the curtain has long since fallen on his life, the light of his words continues to shine brightly. And so, the man who gave us Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, and so many other treasures left behind a gift that would last forever. His plays and poems are his final curtain call, a reminder of the beauty and complexity of life. They are not just words on a page, they are windows into the human soul. As we close this chapter on William Shakespeare's life, we remember him not only as a playwright, but as a man who understood the world deeply. His story is one of triumph, creativity, and love. And though his time on earth ended over 400 years ago, his voice still speaks to us today, inviting us to laugh, cry, and dream along with him. Chapter 11. The Legacy Lives On. William Shakespeare passed away in 1616, but his story did not end there. In fact, his work became even more famous after his death. His plays, poems, and ideas continued to inspire people all over the world. William's legacy, built on words and stories, lives on to this day. After William's death, his friends and colleagues knew his plays were too important to lose. In 1623, 7 years after he passed away, two of his closest friends, John Heminges and Henry Condell, took on a great task. They decided to collect William's plays and publish them in a single book. This book became known as the First Folio. It was a gift to the world. The First Folio contained 36 of William's plays. Without it, many of his works might have been forgotten. Plays like Macbeth, Twelfth Night, and The Tempest were saved because of this book. Heminges and Condell included a dedication to William, calling him their dear friend. They wanted everyone to know how special he was. The First Folio was not just any book. It was large and expensive, meant to last for generations. Only a few hundred copies were printed, but they traveled far and wide. Today, only 233 copies of the original First Folio remain, and they are considered treasures. Libraries, museums, and collectors value them as some of the most important books ever printed. As the years went by, William's fame grew. His plays were performed not only in England, but also in other countries. Translators brought his words to life in many languages. French audiences laughed and cried at his comedies and tragedies. German theaters staged his histories. In Japan, his works inspired new forms of storytelling. Wherever his plays went, they touched the hearts of people. One reason William's plays became so popular was their universality. His stories explored themes that everyone could understand: love, ambition, jealousy, and forgiveness. These emotions are timeless. They connect people from different cultures and times. Whether it is the heartbreak of Romeo and Juliet or the ambition of Macbeth, his characters feel real, even today. Actors also played a big role in keeping William's legacy alive. Famous performers like Richard Burbage, who had worked with William, continued to perform his plays. Later, actors like David Garrick in the 18th century and Laurence Olivier in the 20th century brought new life to his characters. Each actor interpreted William's work in their own way, making it fresh and exciting for new audiences. In the 19th century, William's fame reached even greater heights. His plays were performed in grand theaters, schools, and small towns alike. People began to study his work, not just for entertainment, but also to understand the beauty of his language and the depth of his ideas. He became known as the Bard of Avon, a title of great honor. One of the most important moments in celebrating William's legacy came in 1769. An actor and playwright named David Garrick organized a festival in Stratford-upon-Avon to honor William. Thousands of people came to the town where William was born. They walked the streets he once knew and visited the places he loved. The festival made Stratford a center for Shakespeare lovers, a tradition that continues to this day. In the 20th century, William's influence grew even more. His plays were adapted for film, television, and radio. Directors reimagined his stories in new ways, setting them in modern cities, distant planets, or fantastical worlds. Audiences discovered that William's plays could be enjoyed in any setting, proving that his ideas were truly timeless. One of the most famous film adaptations is Romeo and Juliet, directed by Franco Zeffirelli in 1968. The film brought the tragic love story to life for a new generation. Later, Baz Luhrmann's 1996 version, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, set the story in a modern city with guns instead of swords. These adaptations showed how William's words could speak to people of all ages and backgrounds. The power of William's plays also inspired education. His works became a central part of schools and universities around the world. Students studied his language, characters, and themes. They explored his use of poetry and storytelling. Teachers found that William's plays offered lessons about life, love, and the human spirit. In addition to being studied, William's plays became a symbol of creativity and culture. The Globe Theatre in London was rebuilt in 1997 to honor his legacy. The new Globe, a replica of the original, became a place where people could experience his plays as they were meant to be seen, on stage, under the open sky. Visitors from around the world come to the Globe to watch performances and learn about William's life. Even in the digital age, William's work remains relevant. His plays are performed in virtual theaters and adapted into video games, graphic novels, and online series. Social media users quote his lines, and his words continue to inspire art, music, and writing. His influence stretches far beyond the stage, proving that great stories never fade. But what makes William Shakespeare's legacy so enduring? Perhaps it is his ability to capture the truth of human experience. He understood the joys and sorrows of life. His characters, whether they are kings or commoners, face struggles that we all recognize. His stories remind us of the beauty and complexity of being human. Today, William Shakespeare's plays are performed more than those of any other playwright. His words have traveled across centuries and continents, touching millions of lives. He remains a symbol of creativity, passion, and imagination. As we look back on William's life and work, we see a man who believed in the power of stories. He gave us tales of love and betrayal, laughter and sorrow, triumph and loss. His words are his legacy, a gift that will continue to inspire for generations to come. Even now, more than 400 years after his death, William Shakespeare is celebrated as one of the greatest writers in history. His plays and poems remind us that art has the power to connect us, to teach us, and to bring us together. And so, his legacy lives on, shining brightly through the pages of his work and the voices of those who perform it. Chapter 12. Why Shakespeare Matters. William Shakespeare is often called the Bard of Avon. But why does he matter so much, even after more than 400 years? What is it about his plays and poems that keeps them alive? The answer lies in his words, his stories, and the way he understood the human heart. Shakespeare's works are not just stories. They are mirrors. They reflect life, its joys, its pains, its struggles, and its triumphs. He wrote about kings and queens, but he also wrote about servants, fools, and common people. His characters feel real because they face the same problems we do today. They fall in love, they make mistakes, and they ask big questions about life. Take Romeo and Juliet, for example. It is a story of young love, passion, and tragedy. Romeo and Juliet come from families that hate each other. Their love is pure, but the world around them is full of anger and violence. When their love ends in tragedy, we feel their pain. But we also see the beauty of their love and the cost of hatred. The story makes us think about how our choices affect others. In Hamlet, Shakespeare takes us into the mind of a grieving young prince. Hamlet mourns his father's death and struggles with betrayal and revenge. His famous question, "to be or not to be," captures the uncertainty we all feel at times. Should we act, or should we wait? Hamlet's story is both personal and universal. It speaks to anyone who has ever faced doubt or loss. Another powerful play is Macbeth. It shows the dangers of ambition and greed. Macbeth is a brave soldier who dreams of being king. But when he takes the throne by killing his friend and ruler, his life falls apart. His guilt and paranoia lead to his downfall. Macbeth warns us about the cost of power when it is gained dishonorably. It reminds us that our choices define who we are. Shakespeare also understood love in all its forms. In Twelfth Night, he explored the joy and confusion of romantic love with humor and charm. In King Lear, he showed the love between parents and children, and the pain that comes when trust is broken. In his sonnets, he wrote about love that endures beyond time. His words about love still touch our hearts because they are honest and timeless. But Shakespeare's genius was not just in the themes of his stories. It was in the way he used language. His words were like music, full of rhythm and beauty. He invented new phrases, many of which we still use today. Have you ever said, "All that glitters is not gold," or "break the ice"? These are Shakespeare's words. His ability to create phrases that stick in our minds is one of the reasons his work endures. Shakespeare also gave us unforgettable characters. Each one is unique and complex. Think of the clever and mischievous Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, or the proud and stubborn Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. These characters feel alive because they are flawed, just like real people. Shakespeare understood that no one is perfect, and that is what makes his characters so relatable. Another reason Shakespeare matters is that his stories adapt to any time or place. Directors and writers have reimagined his plays in countless ways. Romeo and Juliet has been set in modern cities. Macbeth has been turned into a story about gangsters. And The Tempest has inspired science fiction films. His works can fit any setting because the emotions and ideas they explore are universal. Shakespeare's influence goes far beyond the theater. His works have shaped literature, art, and music. Writers like Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, and Maya Angelou were inspired by him. Composers like Verdi and Tchaikovsky turned his plays into operas and ballets. Artists have painted scenes from his stories, and filmmakers continue to adapt his works for the screen. His legacy is woven into the fabric of our culture. But perhaps the most important reason Shakespeare matters is the way his work connects us. His plays remind us that we are not alone in our feelings and experiences. People from every country and background can find something in his stories that speaks to them. His plays bring us together, showing us that we share the same hopes, fears, and dreams. Shakespeare also reminds us of the power of imagination. He created entire worlds with his words. He took us to enchanted forests, royal courts, and stormy seas. His stories challenge us to think, feel, and dream. They inspire us to see the world in new ways and to explore the depths of our own humanity. Even in education, Shakespeare plays an important role. Students around the world study his plays, learning about language, history, and storytelling. His works challenge young minds and teach them to think critically. Teachers use his plays to spark curiosity and creativity. Through Shakespeare, students discover the beauty of words and the magic of stories. William Shakespeare was not just a playwright. He was a storyteller, a poet, and a thinker. He asked the big questions. What is love? What is power? What is the meaning of life? His plays do not give easy answers, but they encourage us to find our own. They invite us to reflect, to feel, and to grow. As we look back on his life and work, we see why he is called the Bard of Avon. He was more than a man from Stratford upon Avon. He was a voice that spoke to the world. His words crossed borders, cultures, and centuries. They taught us about ourselves and each other. They gave us stories that will live forever. Today, we honor Shakespeare not just for what he wrote, but for what he left behind. His plays and poems remind